committed to ensuring that we increase transparency and accountability in how we get to provide a balance sheet of how are we performing against the energy action plan, the work that we're doing in ensuring that firstly we reduce the intensity of load shedding and ultimately liquidate load shedding, which is a preeminent crisis that is facing the South African economy, that is undermining growth and interrupting our daily lives. And I previously also mentioned that whenever there's stage 6, we look at stage 6 as treated as an extraordinary event, as an outlier. Before November, I think stage 6 was one of the common occurrences in our quest to manage, if you like, the integrity of the grid, protect the grid. But since November, one of the things that we have succeeded in doing is to ensure that we don't get to stage 6 as a way of balancing the grid. And I've made the point that if we're to get to stage 6, we will ensure that at the earliest available opportunity, we are able to share with the general public, industry and the South Africans at large, what are the causes of why we are at stage 6, what are these variables that have connived to undermine the trajectory that we have mapped for ourselves, and also what are we doing to address that situation. On the occasion of the State of the Nation address, the President does make an important observation, and it's something that I had mentioned here on a number of occasions. I've made the point that we have turned the corner in addressing the load shedding question. The President makes a point that we see the light in the resolution of load shedding. And this is on the back of the trend line, and I'll share with you what the trend line looks like. So I'm not going to, there's a cross-sectional study assessment. Essentially, the trend line, the longitudinal assessment is where we were. We use the baseline or the starting period of May, and we're seeing what is the trend line. And there's about 2 or 3 variables that we are tracking that give us, if you like, an indication if there's any progress or regression in our quest to resolve load shedding. And then there's what we call a cross-sectional analysis. So essentially where we are at now, what is the situation? So we're separating the two. I'll share with you what the trend line is, what has been this performance over a period of time, but also share with you where we are now. And where we are now is that we are experiencing stage 6, and then I'll share with you what the causes thereof are, and also what are we doing to ensure that we go back to what has been the cadence that we have established, I think, since the end of November, in keeping with the ESCOM summer plan. Just a recap, so ESCOM does release what we call a summer plan when we go into warmer periods of the year. So ESCOM will say that in terms of their projections, we anticipate that there's so many megawatts that will be out of, not available as a result of the unreliability of the units, and also as a result of the partial load losses. The unreliability simply means that we expect that there are units that are going to fail on their own, and as a result of that failure, they are going to take out the megawatts. We also expect that there are units that are going to remain on load, give us the megawatts, but the amount of megawatts that they are giving us don't approximate what is, if you like, their design capacity. So they are not operating at the highest efficiency. When you put those together, what have failed on their own and that which we are losing as a result of the inefficiencies in the system, we put that as an unplanned capacity loss factor. So when ESCOM went out to announce that summer plan, they make the point that if we assume that the unplanned capacity loss factor is about 14,500 megawatts at any given time, that is, there's 14,500 megawatts of electricity that is not available, it's out as a result of those 2 variables, then we're expecting that load shedding is going to be about stage 4. So that's what the summer plan is. So when the President makes the point that indeed there's light at the end of the tunnel, our quest to resolve load shedding, when I make the point that we have turned the corner, is that we're outperforming that summer plan. So essentially, we've been at stage 4 was the maximum we've experienced, but we've been averaging between stage 1 and consistently at stage 2. So relative to what we had planned, I think we've been outperforming that plan. And then the second part is that there's units that in terms of the energy action plan, when the president unveiled it, was that we wanted to ensure that we retain some of these units. So he unveiled the energy action plan in July, and in October we lost those 3 units at Kgosientsho, and then the energy action plan had to take that into account and say there has to be an accelerated intervention rather to accelerate the return of these units. And of course we are on record, those units are back and generating the megawatts. And then there's also the synchronization of Unit 5 at Kgosientsho, and we have made the point that we have synchronized it. Of course, it's not at maximum output because test still continues to happen intermittent, but I'm sure by March, April of this year, then we are going to get to a maximum capacity. And then the units at Quebec, our only nuclear power station, were delayed with regards to the return of Unit 1. That has been resolved, and then we have taken out Unit 2. And the intention of doing that is to meet the licensing requirements because we want to ensure that there's an extension of life. And then as part of that plan, we did say that Medupi, I think Unit 4, you know that we have an interim arrangement. We're able to truncate the return period from 2025 to 2024. The state has arrived in the country, so we're confident about our ability to get in that 800 megawatts towards June of this year. And then we're still on course to get unit number 6 at Kgosientsho. Kgosientsho is still a construction site. We are still on track to get that unit there by end of the year. So when the president makes that point, he simply appreciates that we are ahead of the curve in terms of that which we had planned for ourselves. So what do we know about that trend line? So if you use May as a baseline, we know that if you look at the unplanned capacity loss factor, that is the rate at which the units are failing on their own, and also the rate at the degree to which we are unable to reach the levels of efficiency, the units giving us the megawatts that they are designed for. We are sitting at 17,369 megawatts. So at any given time, on average during that May period, we're sitting at 17,365 megawatts of energy that was not available to the grid, and therefore undermining our ability to address load shedding. But because we're also entering the winter period, the planned outages were kept low so that we are able to extract as much megawatts as possible from these installed units, essentially super exploitation of the installed units. We are able to sweat the assets, and that's why we kept the planned outages at about 3,120. So if you put them together, so it means that at any given time you had about, if you like, 20,400 megawatts that they were out. So what has been the improvement? So you look at the trend line with regards to unplanned capacity loss factor, we kept on bringing it down. If you look at the period of December and January, December we're at our lowest in terms of the efficiency, the performance of these units, the rate of failure of these units. We're at 3,472, in January at 14,302. So it simply means that over that period from May to January, we've been able to add onto the grid, if you like, the savings on the unplanned capacity loss factor of over about 3,000 megawatts. But because during that period we were also experiencing significantly lower levels of demand because the energy-intensive users had closed, your major industries had closed, we ramped up that planned maintenance from the 3,120 megawatts to about 8,000 megawatts. And the point to be made here is that we also appreciated that there are inherent risks in this approach that we are taking. The inherent risk in the approach that we are taking is that you are ramping up planned maintenance, so it means that you are undermining the buffer that is available. If you are to have a situation where there's a cluster of units that are failing, you have big units failing, then you don't have room. All that you have is the intensification of load shedding. We accepted that to be an inherent risk, but we also appreciated that there are returns with regards to this approach. What are the returns? Is that because of the fiscal support that we had received from National Treasury, it's important that we do the right thing, that we are able to improve the health and the performance of these units. We need to invest in them. So if you like, there's a short-term pain and long-term gain. So we accepted that. And that's why when you went during that period of November, in November, we had that cluster of units failing. And as a result of that cluster of units failing, because we have undermined the buffer that we would ordinarily have as a result of heightened levels of maintenance, and that's why we had reached stage 6 even at that time. But what do we know? We know that once these units come back from planned maintenance, they are healthier, they remain on load most of the time, and they approximate, if you like, their design capacity. So what is the point I'm making? Is that we have taken a calculated risk, and I had said to the country that in the effort to resolve load shedding, we are not going to cut corners. So we will not issue any instruction to the ESCOM board. We don't have any intention to. We will not do that, and also the board will not accept that. We will not do that also to management, issue that instruction. What is important is that we do things the right way, so that we are able to ensure that we regain these megawatts that have been lost over a period of time as a result of our failure to concentrate and focus on maintenance, and accepted that as part of that strategy, there's going to be, we're opening ourselves to what I refer to as an inherent risk. That is, when we have a cluster of units failing, you are likely going to intensify that load shedding. And of course, that's the situation that we experience now. And I'll share with you what are the units that had gone out, what are the reasons that they had gone out, and what are we doing to return them, and when are we going to return them, and when are we going to, do we expect to go back to those levels, stage 4, stage 3, and gradually going down until we are able to resolve the load shedding question. So the point I'm making is that there is a price we pay for purposes of ensuring that we do things the right way, will not cut corners, will not do things that are expedient. I think there has to be a general appreciation that to fix this grid, we need to be very meticulous, invested in the correct procedure of resolving this question, and accepting that there's going to be setbacks. And of course, from Friday until today, we have been experiencing that setback, but we'll recover out of that setback. And you will see that as we go over a period of time, that these setbacks essentially become smaller and smaller. The intensity of load shedding reduces. Ultimately, we get to a situation where we are able to resolve load shedding. So what is it that we know about the stages of load shedding? So the first thing is that, I think the point I'm making is that stage 6 is an outlier. When I say an outlier, it's not a common occurrence. And you don't have to believe me. One of the things I always mention is that the remarkable thing about the portfolio that I've been assigned, where I'm working with my team, your ability to measure the performance of the team is easy. The amount of hours that your lights are on during this period relative to the same period last year. And if there's an improvement, the lights are on most of the time, it means that the team is moving in the right direction. If the lights are on for a reduced period of hours compared to the same period last year, it means that we are regressing, and therefore the team is not keeping up to its promise. So we know that the last time we had experienced stage 6 load shedding was in November, and in fact we had 6 days of load shedding. We know that in December, 6 days of stage 6 load shedding. We know that in December we did not have this stage 6 of load shedding. And in fact, the highest stages of load shedding, 8 days that we have had in December, was stage 4. Of course, it means that for the remainder of December, we have outperformed, if you like, the summer plan. And that's why the president is saying that we are ahead of the curve. We can see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel in our quest to resolve load shedding. You go to January, the number of days where we had stage 6, we had 0. and a significant number of days there. We had stage 3, stage 2, 12 days, stage 1, 1 day, and that has been what the period of December carried there for us. And of course, we have entered February. Now we have experienced that stage 6 load shedding. So is that all the risks that I spoke of, the inherent risk materialized? Why is it that we have reached this stage 6 now as I speak to you? So the biggest contributor, so if you look at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4,400 megawatts were taken out as a result of what we call boiler tube leaks. And we will ask, but now that you can see that this is one of your biggest risk area, and even the last time when we had that cluster of failure, boiler tube leaks contributed a significant proportions of the megawatts that had gone out. I want to say that we're taking, the ESCOM management has taken a decision having identified boiler tube risk as a major area of concern that undermines the availability of these units. They are working directly with the original equipment manufacturers. So you don't go through the middlemen, then engagement with the people who have designed these units. The people who know the DNA of these units are the ones who are assigned the responsibility to deal with this, so that we are able to, if you like, do a proper root cause analysis, be able to diagnose and then provide the prognosis, return these units to service at the quickest possible period of time, having taken account of all the safety concerns. One of the things that we emphasize when we engage with the team at ESCOM is that we should not place a single life at risk in our endeavor to return the units quicker. We must do everything that is right, even if it means that the intensity of load shedding will be above the summer plan. But it's important that we do things right, so that first, avoid any injury fatalities. We've got a duty to the employees at ESCOM, and then ultimately make sure that when these units come back, they come back, if you like, healthier. So essentially, we had 9 units that contributed to this 4,400 over a space of 2 days. So it's a cluster of these units failing simultaneously, and a lot of these units are big units. So they are big units. When I say big units, an individual unit is generating over about 600 megawatts. So Letabo, we had the units going out. Matimba, we had the unit going out. Duva, we had the unit going out. Majuba, we had the unit going out. Each of those units at those individual power stations, they were each taking out 600 megawatts. And then when you combine them with Grootvlei, Camden, and Letabo 5 also, and Krill, 4,400 megawatts went out over that period of 2 days. So essentially, it's about, if you like, to use the nomenclature of load shedding, it's like 4 stages of load shedding, essentially imposed on us as a result of this boiler tube leak. And we must juxtapose this with the fact that our planned maintenance is still at about 7,000 megawatts. So someone was saying, but why are you not cutting down quickly on planned maintenance? We are calling it planned maintenance because it has been planned. The engine is out there fixing it. And like I said, don't cut corners. If it means that you ramp up the intensity of load shedding for purposes of ensuring that we do the right things, return the units healthier, we are going to do this, explain ourselves to the country. Short-term pain, long-term gain, that's the point I'm making. Of these 9 units that had gone out, I'm happy to mention that 2 of these units have since come back. Letabo 5 has come back, Krill 2 has come back. And then also I know that they are working on getting one of the units in Medupi to come back. I'm sure Becky will give us an additional information on how far we on those. And then we are expecting to return these units, to return this 4,400, the 3,400 megawatts, because we have already returned the 1,000 megawatts. We expect the last of these units that failed on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to return by Wednesday of this week. And that's when, by Tuesday, we're going to see significant reduction, going back to those levels 4, 3, 2, and 1, and also periodically not having load shedding on starting Wednesday going forward. Of course, there could be a situation where during that period we go a little bit a stage lower, perhaps stage 5, just to manage the reserves, the dam levels. It's a consideration that will be made. But for purposes of getting to those levels of stage 4 and lower, we are projecting that we'll get that by Wednesday. And then the second part about the prospects of the immediate prospects going into the future is that as part of that planned maintenance, a significant proportion of these units are now expected to come back towards the beginning and end of March. So we'll be moving from levels of 7,000 megawatts. We are going to lower levels, about 6,000, 5,000, and that's where you're going to see significant improvement on the intensity of load shedding, and we expect that there could be periods during the day where you don't have load shedding. Of course, there are units that have promised to return, they have not returned on time. This remains a particular focus area of management led by the most competent Mr. Bekin Ngumalo. Matimba 2, Camden 4, and Kendall 3. We are expecting it to be returning also this morning. I'm sure Mr. Ngumalo will provide a live, if you like, account of where we are with regards to Kendall 3 and also one of those units at Medupi. So all the point I'm making is that we can account for the sources of failure. We know what the issues were, boiler tube leaks. And if there are other things that people will speculate about, will not enter into that domain. I think is the area of management. Mr. Ngumalo, the board and the executive will look at that. All we are working is to ensure that we return these units. And if there are other issues that requires attention, I'm sure those issues will require attention. That undermines our ability to keep to the promise of ensuring that consistently we are able to reduce the levels of load shedding. And then the other variable that connived to undermine, if you like, the intensity of load shedding is that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and including today, of course, is the fact that we have not been receiving a lot of the megawatts from our solar PV and also from wind. Remember that when we do the PM projection, we also make certain assumptions in relation to what are the megawatts that we are likely going to receive from the renewables, and they have not been able to give us, if you like, the kind of megawatts that we had anticipated because of the climatic condition. So this must not subtract from the fact that we must continue on this path of greening, but it's just a common appreciation that the renewables thrive on the redundancy of base load, and that's why base load is key to ensure that we are able to protect the performance of the economy, to ensure that we don't interrupt life going into the future. So the summary point I'm making is that we are able to account on what has resulted in this, if you like, intensification of load shedding. Those 9 units that went out, units that went out, 9 of them as a result of boiler tube leaks. 2 of them have been returned. A number of them are returning tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's when we'll be able to come to begin to see, if you like, going back to what we now got established as a trend, not going above stage 4, but going to lower levels. And then once we're able to make the kind of strides that we hope to make on new generation capacity, we should be in a position to ultimately address the issue of load shedding. So I think it's important that there's a common appreciation. We can account for what had happened, and I did make the admission that it's a calculated risk. We knew that there are risks, inherent risks in the strategy that we are pursuing. What is the strategy that we are pursuing in conclusion is that there has to be heightened levels of planned maintenance. We have received fiscal support. We do things right. Don't cut the corners. Make sure that whatever you do, you place the safety of employees first. We return them at the time we said we'll return them. When we return them, they are healthier, they perform better, the efficiency levels are higher. That's how we're going to resolve load shedding. And then accept that there's a risk associated with the strategy we're pursuing. And those risks materialized. They materialized Thursday, Friday, Saturday. These units went out, and then we're able to show you how we're going to recover them going into the future. And what do we know? We know that we continue to make stage 6 an outlier. Should not be something that we are accustomed to. Stage 5 should not be something we are accustomed to. Gradually, we also want to make stage 4 something we are not accustomed to until we are able to resolve load shedding going into the future. Thanks, TK.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this clarity and the insights. Colleagues, we will now open the floor to questions for further clarity and information from members of the media. We'll start with those who are joining us here in the room, and then we'll also take questions.
By 31 March 2024, as per the medium-term system adequacy outlook. Helena from News 24, please can you expand on the climatic conditions that affected renewables output? Secondly, can you confirm that the expectation is that we will only return to stage 4 and below by Wednesday? Continuing from that, we have another question from Kgosientsho. Have to what? Okay. Terence Klima, engineering news. Was the minister consulted on the statement in the President's sooner that the end of load shedding is finally within reach? If so, what informed the minister's endorsement of such a statement? And what accountability does the minister intend to take for the acute credibility crisis and embarrassment this has now caused for the President and government as a whole? The second question from Terence Klima: can the minister outline the next steps to implement the innovative investment models announced by the President in Persona with regards to the transmission grid? And can we unpack what those models will involve? Thirdly, has the minister formally appealed last year's load shedding judgment, and has the court confirmed a date for appeal? The fourth question from Kgosientsho is the NCSG Balula said yesterday there was obviously sabotage at play. Is there any substantiation for this? There is no mention of this in the ESCOM release, and no mention of this in the minister's briefing this morning. Another question is from Business Day, Benin Erasmus. Yesterday, there was about 17,000 megawatts out on unplanned outage. The minister outlined how boiler tube leaks contributed 4.4 megawatts to this. Can we have details on the other stations that are contributing to the total outage the minister mentioned module? Can we get an update on how much has been spent on diesel in ESCOM's current financial year for its own and IPP or CGTs? How much is left of the diesel budget to end March? To continue, we once again have Kgosientsho asking, there is no mention in the ESCOM release of the reduced output of renewables. Please can you quantify in megawatts the impact? That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peliswa. We will start with Mr. Numalo, who will be followed by the Minister.
Thank you, Takane. Morning, Minister, and morning to the members of the media. Maybe on the first question that Antoinette, you raised with regard to the messages that comes sometimes at night and all of that. So I think I must confess that it is an undesirable situation. as ESCOM, as you would appreciate, we are a 24-hour-a-day business, so things can change at any given point in time. But as a team, we will try to make sure that the public is informed timeously whenever possible. But if the situation changes, then it fosters that type of a response. But we try by all means to minimize that. I think the other question that was raised by Kaya News colleague as well was with some of the people that are not able to watch this address by the minister this morning. And I think it's something that is crippling all of us. Hence the minister this morning asked that we come and brief the nation in terms of what has happened that has led to this, and the plans that we are putting in place to go out of this stage 6 as soon as possible. So we are truly apologizing for that. And then there was another point that was raised with regards to winter. The minister made a point that we are still above 7,000 on the plan, which is normal with the profile of where we are now. As we go to winter, we also prepare so that by that time, the amount of available energy also increase as the demand also increase. So we are working on those plans just to make sure that the maintenance that we are doing now is helping us to be able to deal with the high winter period. The 65% Pelela in terms of for the month of March, obviously that was the month of March number that we report have set up for us, which we are looking at as the units are returning now from the outages. So that's what we are still aiming for that end of March month, that we still get to around 65%. Obviously, as the unit return from major outages, there is commissioning that might create some risk on that, but we are not changing that to say by March month, we need to be as close as possible to that aspiration and challenge that the board has given us. Okay, the stage 4 by Wednesday that the minister spoke to, that's what we are working around the clock to at least to be around that stage by that time. And Minister, I can see that there is a high confidence with the number of units that we plan to return between today and tomorrow and Tuesday, that we should be able we will be driving to get towards that lower stages by Wednesday. I think in terms of the 17,000 megawatts, the minister did detail that, but what we looked at what created the massive change in the quantum, which was the boiler tube leaks that, it was like one single incident within the space of few days that caused that. And the rest of the other units, you've seen it on the right-hand side of the minister's presentations. The units like Duva, Medupi, and Kendall. Kendall, I must say that it has since come back, Minister, this morning. It's one unit, Kendall 3. It's another unit that came from a very big outage as well, where we were also upgrading the emissions. Kendall has been having issues with our emissions there, so we came from a major outage there to replace the emissions abatement equipment. So it has just returned today after the whole weekend of doing the grid test as well. So that unit now we expect it to add. And then the Medupi one, Medupi failure was not on the tube leaks, and we removed it there. We had just a chain that removed the coarse ash in the boiler that broke down inside the boiler. Because it was a safety risk, then the power station management have taken a decision to say, we've taken the unit out. And I want to concur with the minister as well that when there is unsafe conditions on the plant, we really don't get any pressure from government. That is the decision that we make in the station. And and that is the standard that we will hold, even if things are difficult. We will be me who's taking that pressure from outside, but the stations will do what is right. And the team at Medupi did just that. When it was unsafe to run the unit, they've taken it out, even when we were going to get to this stage 6 change. So I just want to emphasize that point, Minister, to say we will not compromise the safety of the employees or the safety of anyone on site because we are at load shedding. So that is the pain we will not trade for that. Thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much, Becky. Maybe just to make the point on when the President put together the SONA, he canvasses, if you like, departmental inputs. And of course, he finally makes a determination how he constructs it. But on the issues of facts, he relies on the department. And in this instance, there is nothing new that the President has said. So what the President makes the point there around that the end is within sight. I've made the point that we have turned the corner, so it means the same thing. I've shared with you what the trend line is, and I've told you that there's going to be setbacks as a result of some of those inherent risks associated with the strategy that we are pursuing, and when those risks materialize, we are going to end with a stage 6 that we are experiencing now. But the trend line is important to communicate a message of whether we are making progress against our stated objective. The numbers are there, and I always make the point that you don't have to believe me standing here, you don't have to believe the President. All you have to ask yourself the question is, the number of hours my lights are on a day, the same or lower to the comparable period the previous year? And the answer is in the affirmative, is that they are there, they are on for the longest time. Are we outperforming our own summer plan? We are outperforming our own summer plan against all the key indicators. So it is inside, in addition to arriving at what underpins that statement also is Medupi 4, Kusile number 6, and the kind of investments we are making on the maintenance side. Yes, the President is correct, so I really don't understand what is meant by embarrassment. Just a coincidence that immediately after that delivery, then the risk materializes. But it's not something that is outside what has been essentially possible, the realm of possibility. I made the point that the inherent risk in this strategy, it's exactly that, is the risk materializing and the intensification of load shedding, but the returns will be seen over a period of time. That's the point I'm making. And then there are a few things I know about Eskom. Outside Mr. Nxumalo and his team, the executive team at Generation, there is no person who has visited the power stations more than myself in that period of about 10 months since I've been in office. Every time when I go to Eskom, I do 3 things. It's an established template. It's an engagement with management. It's an engagement with organized labor. It's an engagement with the general workers at Eskom. I want to make this point clear on nationality, that the vast majority of the employees at Eskom, the critical mass of those men and women, competent, qualified, patriotic, and committed, they want to resolve load shedding. And they are the first one who will blow the whistle to say that there are some amongst us whose conduct is undermining our progress towards the resolution of load shedding. So I think it's important that I make that point. I'll keep on repeating it. I have the fullest confidence in the leadership of Mr. Nxumalo, the team below him, of course starting with the board, the competent board, and also the acting CEO and his executive team. But I don't discount the fact that there could be elements that are trying to undermine the efforts that we are doing. To the extent that we are yet to establish what the facts are, I leave it at that. I mean, to the extent that there's incidents that requires investigation, Mr. Nxumalo will do that. I will not enter into that terrain. It's a terrain of management. If there are areas where he thinks he needs assistance, of course, through the board from the executive authority on the generation side to say we think that there are these occurrences that are inconsistent with the mechanical failure associated with this component. They'll raise that if they don't have the capacity themselves to investigate. And until they come to us and they say that I am not at the point where I'm able to make such statements. So I think it's important that I'm able to make that point. And I'm not discounting that. So it's important that you understand what I'm saying. But I'm saying that we can account, as Mr. Numan and myself has indicated, these 7 units on boiler tube leaks, plus I think the other 4, Duva and the others, and then also the Midupi. There's 1 or 2 incidents that I know Mr. Numan is investigating, and once that investigation comes to fruition, then we can make absolute statements about what is happening there. And then the other one has to do with, I did say in the last briefing of last year that we have gone back to the court, Bafedile, in relation to that determination of ensuring that the schools, hospitals, police stations, they have uninterrupted supply of electricity. And what the ruling says is that the Minister of Electricity must take reasonable steps. So I've gone back to the court to clarify what is meant by reasonable steps. Because remember that if I don't put in place those reasonable steps, I could be found wanting in conflict with what the court has said, essentially in contempt of court. So it must be stipulated exactly what is that is meant to be reasonable, so that we are consistent with the application of the court. And the second one is, why is it that some other installations are taken out? For an example, water is life. So I would have thought that in the package of those installations, they could be saying that the water infrastructure, such as your reservoir, your water treatment plants, those are excluded in that computation. So we want to know, how do you prioritize? How do I put that below, if you like, uninterrupted supply to police stations, when you know that everyone relies on water and it's got a significant limitation on the constitutional rights of communities. So we have gone back to seek that clarity in the form of an appeal, and we are hopeful that we will get that clarity. What is not in question, and that we have admitted in our initial submission, is that load shedding is causing significant harm and significant limitation to the constitutional rights of communities. So that's not in question. And also what's not in question is that we are taking every measure, steps necessary to ensure that we are able to protect the country in relation, or some of these installations in relation to the adverse impacts of load shedding going into the future. And then on the issue of when will it end, I always make the point, it's a moving target. So all I can tell you is that these are the initiatives we are taking. When you get to a point where you have liquidated load shedding, there's going to be significant investment into the economy of this country. There's going to be a requirement for additional capacity to be able to support, if you like, the growth in the economy. So it's important that we're able to take that into account. But I've made the point, we remain on track, confident, maybe before Kusile 6, as they come on stream, as we onboard additional renewable generation capacity, we should be able to be getting closer to the resolution of this question. What's undermining our ability to onboard in a most aggressive fashion new renewable energy capacity is the constraints on the grid. And I've made the point that now, when we went to cabinet, we are proceeding now in putting together, if you like, a bespoke mechanism that is going to help us to tap into the liquidity of the private sector to support the transmission development plan that is rolled out by ESCOM. ESCOM has got that of enough financing for about 1,400 kilometers of new lines in the next 3 years, but we think we need significantly more. We have got our lessons on the IPP side for new generation. We think that we can import those experiences to design a solution to make interventions also on the transmission side. The next briefing I'll be doing, the focus will be on those interventions on transmission. So I'm just asking if we can just be a bit patient. I'll come back on that in relation to what the interventions we're making on the transmission side, what are the kind of solutions that we are looking at. And you will see that there's nothing novel about what we are proposing. We are drawing on those experiences that we have accumulated when we put the IPP office. We're going in that direction. There has to be alignment in what we are doing. Of course, the broader government alignment and taking on board the new board of ESCOM transmission so that there's a degree of alignment. But on that intervention, its resilience and impact, I think it's efficacious. It has been proven across the globe. We're not doing something new, like I said, it's not novel. Also in domestic terms, but international terms, Chile, Peru, Brazil have gone the same route. We're likely going to follow the same route, and the state remains the primary custodian and owner of the transmission infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa and Mr. Begin-Ngumalo, for the clarity on the questions that were presented in our first round. We will now go to our second and final round of questions for this media briefing. We'll, as usual, start with the hands that we have in the House and follow with questions that are on our online platform. I see Antoinette is the first one, followed by Katleho. Any more hands in the room? Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Ngumalo, you say ESCOM will make sure the public is informed timelessly. Now, I can understand the messages that were sent out in the middle of the night in an emergency situation. But I want to challenge you on the message that was sent out to move us to stage 3 on Thursday night. It was issued 9 minutes past 9. It was neatly typed out, so clearly prepared. And it communicated that the emergency reserves must be replenished. Now, surely you knew that by close of business that day. Why was that message delayed? Was it on behalf of the SODA? Did ESCOM make the decisions about the timing of its communications on the basis of political considerations? Or what is the explanation, please?
Thanks, Antoinette. Go to Katleho.
Again from the SABC. I wanted clarity on that issue of security. Is the minister saying that there are cases that are currently being investigated by ESCOM that can be attributed to where we find ourselves now, where stage 6 is concerned? Because, yeah, the issue of security, can we get clarity on that? And another one, I want to understand the issue of maintenance. How does it work? The leaks, could they have been avoided? The boiler tube leaks, and going forward, could we see maybe maintenance that would see these boiler tube leaks not coming to disturb the work that has been done over time? Can you please break down the maintenance issue? Could this boiler tube leaks have been avoided if there was adequate maintenance happening there as well?
Thank you, Katleho.
Minister, this is a very difficult time for small businesses that are relying on electricity to generate money, especially those that don't have backup power. There are some areas that have had prolonged electricity outages for about 4 days. It's not even 4 hours. Are you able to perhaps present a permanent solution to their crisis? Are we looking to building nuclear power stations in the long run? What could be the solution to such a crisis?
Thank you. Your media house and your name, please.
Oh, sorry, Newsroom Africa, Zola Shoran.
Any more questions in the room? Peliswa, can you take us through the questions online?
Thank you. First question is from Helmore. It's from independent media. Any update on why non-ESCOM generation fell so much from August and is now negative year-on-year in November? And secondly, could you please shed light on the transmission investment options? The next question we have is a follow-up question from Janine Erasmus. Please share the presentation with, it will be from Kgosientsho. The aspiration of EAF of 65% was for the whole 2023-24, not just the EAF on one day on 31st March 2024. Are you changing the EAF goalposts? And Denise is also asking that her question on diesel expenditure and budget has not been answered. We also have a question from, about 4 questions from Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, 24. Why was the stages of load shedding escalated from stage 2 to stage 6 so soon after the president in the SONA on Thursday said that the worst of load shedding is behind us and that there is light at the end of the tunnel? Second question, does this mean that the president lied about load shedding on the State of the Nation address, and why or why not? Could this worsening of load shedding so soon after SONA be ascribed to bad planning by ESCOM or bad communication to the president, and why or why not? Did sabotage play any role in the escalated levels of load shedding, and why or why not? That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peli. So we will start with Mr. Ngumalo. But just to set the record straight, there were no lies. The president didn't lie, the minister did not lie, but the minister will address that aspect. And Denise's question also with regards to the expenditure, the diesel expenditure will be addressed as well. We'll start with Mr. Ngumalo.
Antoinette, thank you for your question. I think, thank you for that, because it provided the platform that for me to explain it better. I think on Thursday, we were correctly at the correct stage. What happened just after around 6:30 in the evening, you see that at Medupi Unit 3, and remember that is a 800 megawatt machine. They pick up the risk on this chain that I spoke about. You've seen that Medupi was down, that they are having a risk. Obviously, when the chain stops, the station, we don't just shut down the boiler immediately. There is a process that gets followed, you know. People in maintenance, remember it's 6:30, it's already people are at home, you need to call standby teams back. You know, they deloaded the machine correctly, following the procedure of what happened. You see, the good thing with the power station, there's a procedure for everything. If this happened, this is what you do. So you call people, people will arrive at the station just after 7, around that, especially the maintenance and the engineering team, to support our operating staff. And then they will do their assessment. Then the maintenance will go, they take the permits, and then they will assess, and then they will say, no, look, we can't repair this on load, we need the machine down. So you could imagine that, but obviously the production management, because one thing that we have, we've got the senior managers that are on 24-hour shift to support the station. They are already aware of this risk, they alerted all of us up to myself, and then at some point then the power station manager make a call to say, this is unsafe, I can't run the unit, I need to take it down. Then by that time, then the team will start. That is independent of what was happening with the statement that the president was making. Even the minister at that time or the board, they were not even aware of what's happening because, but I was informed, and then the power station manager made a call to say we were taking the unit down. Then that's when then we get information then collated to definitely to prepare that. Then after midnight, the same evening, you saw there on the statement that the minister, that's what we said, we are going then to stage higher than what we have, because as you could see, it's the 800 machine coming off. And then after midnight, the same day there, the second unit at Medupi 2 on that statement, it also tripped. So you could see now that within the matter of like 6 hours or so we lost 1,600 megawatts on one of the big stations. So that's why the stages then has to change. Unfortunately, because then by that time the team from production and system operator, they will make a call to say this is what is happening. They will call all of us around that early hours of the night to say this is what is happening. And then we assess to say if we're not gonna have enough capacity to do pumping, then it's gonna be worse the next day. So that's why then those decisions happened like that. It had really nothing to do with what the president was saying or to undermine. There was no prepared speech. You can see the records as well of what I'm saying. It happened exactly like that, and then we went to the issue of the troop leaks. I think there was a question, I think you asked if there's issues of security that is being investigated. I think, as you know, the security cluster is within the stations. We are doing investigations within our coal space, everywhere. So these are ongoing things to look for intelligence. But currently on what has happened that led to this, you've seen that the biggest change is what I've just explained now with Medupi. And then also what has happened with the number of troop leaks then that happened between Thursday and Friday as well. So there is ongoing investigations and security scans that we are undertaking all the time. But yeah, that's what the minister was talking about. Okay, the issue of prolonged status. Okay. I think that apologies for not answering the diesel question as well, because we are also, when we talk about reserves, we talk about both, that is water and diesel. So for now, the diesel, we are still within the allocated budget, and we are planning to finish within that allocated budget. If there is some changes on that, I will be then taking, but for now, we are still within. So long as we can quickly bring down the stages of load shedding and not persist at this prolonged high level, then we should be able to meet the diesel budget that has been given to us. Chris, the issue of 65, let me explain it. We have been explaining it for quite a number of remember the year average EAF that is approved by board is 60%. And then the 65 was for the month of March going into the next financial year. So that's how it is. And that's how we've been explaining it as well, that 65% was the month of March going into the next financial year. That's where the 65% EAF expected is. And then end of 25 March, the expectation is that we go to 65. Hopefully that I'm explaining it better this time, Minister. Thanks.
Thank you, Becky. Maybe just to go back to an answer I've provided in relation to the President's statement of the ending of load shedding is within reach. So when you do an analysis of the efficacy or the performance against a plan, you don't do what we call a cross-sectional analysis. So essentially, you don't ask yourself, where am I today? You do an analysis over a period of time. And let me trivialize the complexity of this analysis so that everyone at home is able to answer this question and not listening to me nor the president on their own. What was the amount of load shedding or the amount of hours that you didn't have electricity in November 2023 compared to November 2022? What was the amount of load shedding in December of 2023 compared to December 2022? What was the amount of load shedding in January 2023 compared to January 2024? What is the amount of load shedding in February of 2023 compared to February of 2024? It's coming down. That's the point I'm making. And it's on account of the fact that the units have returned, as we said, they will return. Unit 1, 2, 3, Kusile. Unit number 5 is synchronized. The investments that Mr. Nxumalo, Treasury has made available to Mr. Nxumalo and the team is coming down, and that's why we're saying that it's within reach. And we expect Unit 4, Midupi, Unit 6, Kusile to come on stream this year. The end of load shedding is within reach. So don't believe me. Don't believe the president. Just do your own analysis. This is one department where the success or failure of the ministry can be easily evaluated by an average person. And that's the point that the president was making. And then we continue to illustrate that indeed is within reach. We are making that progress. To Helmut, on the issue of transmission, I did say we'll come back to you and share just a dedicated session briefing on the transmission side, because I think it's more involved. There's a lot of technical issues that we'll be addressing with you. And just to Zola, so there are challenges on the distribution side where transformers are failing. Those challenges, Eskom is also attending to them. They have little to do with the generation capacity. So even in instances where you are at lower stages of load shedding, instances where those areas are not meant to be load shed, they simply don't have electricity as a result of poor investment on the distribution side. Challenges that are faced by municipality, challenges that have to do with the overloading and therefore explosion of those assets on the distribution side, your transformers, your substations, and that's why you're experiencing prolonged period of not having electricity. So this is outside the load shedding schedule. And that's something that is being attended to by Eskom distribution, working with municipalities to see how best we can address that situation. But once more, let me take the opportunity to thank you. Like I said, we'll keep on updating you on the progress that we are making. I did make the point that transmission will receive a significant focus, and thanks to Mr. Nxumalo and the team, some of the units have been returning, are returning, will return tomorrow. We'll see that attenuation, and we'll continue to see the trend line, underline the trend line going down. And I do accept that as a result of this approach that we are taking, there's an inherent risk. If that risk materializes, we don't have sufficient buffer. That's why you see the intensification, but there's no denial that over this period, there's been a sustained decrease. Our intention is not just to reduce the intensity of load shedding. Our intention is to liquidate load shedding so that the South African economy is able to stand up on its feet and be able to perform at the desired level as envisaged in the NDP, create jobs, attract the kind of investments we are able to industrialize and ensure that we improve the quality of lives of people. Where these investigations are happening to the extent that they point to something sinister, we'll be the first people to come before the nation with facts to say this is what is happening, these are what we have detected, this is the action that we are taking. We are not discounting anything, but where we are now, we can see where the failures are, and then there are other failures that could not have been explained, and those are being investigated by the right people. But we are working hard to ensure that we are able to reduce the intensity of load shedding. So once more, thank you very much for your attendance, members of the media and the people at home, of course, those who were able to watch. Thanks, Tsakani.
Thank you. you very much, colleagues, and thank you very much to the Minister and Mr. Begin-Ngumalo and the ESCOM team. Colleagues, as indicated, the cadence of these media briefings will continue to be as regular as possible. We will be convening very soon, yet again, for further clarity and transparency on matters related to the energy supply in South Africa. And colleagues, I wish to thank you as well for the coverage that you commit to this existential situation that government and all South Africans are facing. And we'll communicate the details of the next briefing to you in due course. Thank you very much, colleagues.